Here we go. Now we'll see if we get some viewers. I have people signed in on the workbook, so we'll see if they get joined in here. YouTube. We've been having problems with the microphone. Oh, there we go. We got three viewers now. We're going to give it about another 2-3 minutes here. Since I sent the link out late to everybody, I apologize. We're going to give it another couple minutes to get people here logged in and online. Right. Just testing out the chat group. Sorry, our test run didn't work so well earlier today.
Oh, no, it was fine. That solved it right away.
Good. Yeah, I had the same problem when Kyle was running me through the first time. I tried to use Firefox. That's kind of my default. And it kept saying install, install, but Chrome likes it much better. Okay. Well, my clock says 9:05, so we'll go ahead and get started. So good morning, everybody, COVOSTers. It is June 16th, Friday, and it's time for our monthly training. And luckily today, our training coordinator, Kyle, has set up a great presentation with Scott Reuter, who is from the Oregon VOST team. And he's going to be with us today, kind of share his experiences with Oregon VOST and kind of lessons learned, best practices, and kind of give us an overview from his perspective on a VOST team. So with that, I will turn it over to Scott. And Scott, if you want to give us a little background and kind of just jump right on in, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. Good to be here with many people. I'm going to go ahead and go to screen share. Can you guys see the screen share of my PowerPoint? Can you see the screen share of my PowerPoint? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah, Scott, that's better.
Oh, okay. Going back. Here we go. All right. So I've been involved with social media and emergency management and the VOST concept since it began. And I've been doing this since about 2010. Actually, my very first effort on social media for disasters was with Kate Starbird when she was at University of Colorado Boulder for the Boulder fires of, I think that was August 2010. That was the first time I ever tried helping on social media. I had been watching for a while, and that was the first time I jumped in and helped. So I participated and acted as a social media and VOST team lead for lots of different types of natural disasters, a variety of public health emergencies, public safety incidents, all kinds of stuff. And just about every type of natural disaster at this point. At this point, I'm a DHS and FEMA certified instructor for the National Disaster Preparedness Training Center's course, FEMA PDR 304, the basics course, the social media class. I've been doing that for, I guess, 4 years now, almost. Taught the NDPDC social media course in about 27 or 28 states. And it's given me a great opportunity to see emergency management setups in EOCs all over the country, how prepared they are, how unprepared they are for social media. And that has been a really good experience. I also became a FEMA digital communications specialist a few years ago, and I've now been on 5 deployments in the last couple of years. I've been first deployment was South Carolina for some flooding, and then Louisiana, then Texas, then back to Louisiana for the really big flood last year, and then most recently in North Carolina. So I've had some experience both leading bus teams and also doing the social media for FEMA, and it's very different. We're going to talk about some of the differences and the similarities today. So,
Scott,
yes.
I'm curious, what are the biggest differences between being like a FEMA digital communications specialist and working on a VOST team?
When you go in for FEMA, in some ways it's similar because headquarters does have communication specialist people that are supporting you when you are on the ground. I go in as the person who goes into the local joint field office and sits in the JIC. Usually, unless it's a major disaster, they only send one of us. They'll send one person to do traditional media and one person to be the social media person. And we do at this point, almost every disaster you go on, they will do a combined report. So I'll do the social media report, and you do those usually twice a day. Sometimes towards the end of a disaster, that will drop off to once a day. But most disasters I work, you're doing 2 reports a day that get combined into the traditional media report. It goes out at the same time. And you get support, especially during the early days of a disaster. You get support just like a VOST does, except it's from headquarters, and they have in-house people that are helping you as opposed to volunteers. So in that way, it's very similar. But you're very reliant on a FEMA disaster on getting that person on site, on the ground, who can be the eyes and ears for the team. And know what the needs are and know how to adjust your searches and your messaging strategy based on what you're actually seeing and hearing around you in the JIC and on the various field reports that you're hearing and attending. So we'll talk about that quite a bit. Does that answer your question?
No, that was great. Thank you.
You bet. So where was I? So I'm also on I've been on a lot of different social media task force. I've worked with the IAEM Emerging Tech Caucus. I've worked with the Virtual Social Media Working Group, which is now called the Social Media Working Group. I help a lot with National VOAD social media for many years. I think they've still got me on their communications committee, but I don't work with them as much as I used to. But I did like 5 social media talks 5 years in a row at the National VOAD conferences until recently. I'm also a member of the VOST Leadership Coalition and a founding board member of Virtual EMA, which is the Virtual Emergency Management Association, which I'll talk about later. It's a group that just helps people as they're adapting to emergency management and virtual use of virtual teams. So social listening. And also just feel free to ask questions. Stop me during the talk if you need something cleared up. If I'm talking too fast, feel free to stop me and ask me questions. I don't mind being interrupted at all, and it's fine. So social listening is searching public conversations online for relevant topics to the disaster and relevant topics, most importantly, to the mission that your VOST team has established. So this varies according to the disaster phase. You're looking for different things at the beginning of a disaster during response than you are during recovery. I guess that's one of the other biggest differences between FEMA activations and some of the activations we've done for VOST, where we're going in faster towards the very beginning of an incident. Is whenever you're in recovery phase and the disaster starts stretching out for weeks and months, you're looking for different things. But I'll show you some of the searches that we use are the same that we use in a VOST operation. Just a lot of the search terms change, because instead of looking for evacuate or evacuation or evacuated or shelter, you're looking for different recovery related words. For instance, you're looking for I can't think of any off the top of my maybe you're looking, instead of for shelter, you're looking for pod, points of distribution, or and you're most importantly, you're looking for the places that the people who are in recovery are talking. And I'll show you some images of some of the, for instance, the Facebook community relief pages that get set up in every disaster now. Sometimes there are 20 emergency community relief pages, and each one within that disaster is sharing information relevant to their own area or neighborhood or community or city. And each one of them will have different information, and people sharing good information, bad information, rumors on the recovery. So that's what you spend a lot of time doing on a FEMA-related disaster. And that's also yes.
Running like fake accounts, people setting up, for relief efforts when they're in the recovery phase for, money and that kind of thing on Facebook. Have you run into that much?
Yeah, definitely. Crowdfunding it's a relatively new concern. I mean, I didn't really start tracking that until I was helping on a VOST effort for the OSO slide. And we started seeing heavy use of crowdfunding. Every victim or every victim's family just about was setting up crowdfunding. And also not just crowdfunding, but all of the little fundraising efforts that would happen, like the local pizza shops offered to donate 40% of their intake for the day to the local Red Cross if people bought their pizza. So you can keep your eye on these kind of things, and you're not necessarily, the police, you're not going to necessarily track, but you do want to keep an eye and see if people are doing fake crowdfunds or crowdfunds that are obviously not appropriate and not real. Like, for instance, during that very OSO slide, that was OSO Washington landslide, we saw a person set up a new Twitter account, and it was a Twitter account that had no followers, no picture. At the time, of course, it was the famous Twitter egg, but now they've changed that logo. But so it was just a brand new Twitter account, and it said to donate to hashtag 531 slide, which was the main hashtag that was being used. To donate to 531 slide, click here. And it took you to a link to donate money. I can't remember which crowdfunding service it was, but it was one of them. And there was no information about who it was for. There was no way of verifying. So we escalated that right up to the local sheriffs, I believe it was, and they had that it was taken down within about 30 minutes. So that is something that you want to keep your eye on. It's certainly, it might not be the top mission, but if you do have the resources, if you do have enough people to watch those, it's certainly at least worth looking in and seeing what's going on with those. And that they're often self-policing. Like, for instance, on these Facebook community relief pages that I'm talking about, you will see people put up a crowdfunding request to a crowdfunding link on Facebook, and then sometimes they just stay up for days, and other times you'll see somebody post, "Hey, I know that guy, and he's not anywhere near the actual disaster," or so it's not a perfect system, but quite often they are self-policing. So as far as crowdfunding goes, that happens. So social listening varies according to disaster phase. On all platforms, you're looking not just for issues, but the number of posts, the tone of the posts, the sentiment in the posts, and so that's why I recommend saving similar search results by type during each report period. So basically what I'm saying is whether you're saving into a workbook or into your notes, because I'm collecting everything I'm collecting, I'm saving with links so that it's going to end up in a report at the end of the report period. What I'm saying is, with each report period, I save my current search results, and I organize them by type by theme. A lot of times, the themes will be problems at a shelter, urgent needs, specific problems related to the government response. So you'll save these, and once you've got 3 or 4 that are very similar, you've got something that you might call a hot issue, or at least something that's worth keeping your eye on, and maybe even adjusting your searches to make sure that you're finding all of the relevant results regarding that issue, whatever that issue is. So what I'm suggesting is that I'm adjusting both from what I've seen on the FEMA deployments, I'm adjusting how I operate in my VOST to match that. So you should do whatever works best for your team, of course, but I would suggest that if you're saving your search results with an eye towards what it's going to look like in your report, it's going to save you time when you go to do your report. You know what I mean? So, also on social listening, the info requirements for determining the mission are your operational requirements. There are known and unknown issues. The known ones are the anticipated regular things that you see in just about any flood, or if it's a fire, there are specific things that you can anticipate that you will see. So you set up your searches for those things. That's how you start. And then you'll also, along the way, undoubtedly, there will be some unexpected and unexpected and emerging issues during the incident that you didn't anticipate, but couldn't know about, but they'll come up. Another info requirement is, watching public perception, looking for positive or negative perception towards your organization, towards your government, towards a specific disaster relief organization, maybe. So you can look for all those kind of things, and watch for the tone of the posts, the emotional state of the public, based on what you're seeing with your searches. So common issues. I'll just go right into various things that I see a lot. On just about every disaster I've deployed on lately, especially for FEMA, there are lots of Facebook community relief pages. So we spend a lot of time early in the disaster, especially, doing keyword searches, because Facebook is not the easiest to do keyword searches on, but you start with simple searches like right now there's flooding in Missouri. So you would start with just the word Missouri and the word flood. And immediately you will find that gives you results for local community relief pages. And then you can change that once you know which counties are the hardest hit. You can adjust that and say flooding or flood in, excuse me, in specific counties. And this will, and I'm going to show you some examples of these community relief pages in a minute, but you've probably seen them. You guys had flooding in 2012, and I'm sure you had local community people who set up these relief pages, and they help each other. And so within the comments, the posts, the replies on these pages, when they're public, you will see lots of useful information, and a lot of the sentiment of the community is being shared there. The actual needs are being shared there. The people assisting are talking there. And these are amazingly helpful to the community. And we can watch those and see what people are saying. And quite often, good information, misinformation, rumors, excuse me, all of that is being shared on these pages. And they're not easy to, get into all of those nested comments. It takes time to get into each one of those nested comments and look for new information. But that's really where you see a huge amount of the conversation on most disasters now, especially as you go out past the response phase. You get into a few days after that. Once people are starting to help each other on these pages, you'll see lots of discussion there. And it's very helpful information to get into reports regarding community sentiment and all of that. So here's just an example. You would do a search for Missouri flood, and immediately what you see here is West Plains, Missouri of 2017 information page. There's not in Missouri flood info. And these pages come up fast. This one has 5,700 likes. The other one, 566. And these, depending on who sets it up, sometimes these pages only operate for a few days. And then sometimes they come back to life after a week. Maybe somebody went on vacation and all of a sudden they're back. And they move into recovery phase and help all the way through for months or years. Some of these pages get reactivated in areas that get hit for repeatedly with flooding or with hurricanes. Some of these pages will sit dormant and then come back to life whenever another disaster happens. So it's always a good idea to do keyword searches in Facebook, simple keyword searches that will pull up these relief pages and let you see what the community conversation is there. Here are, just as an example, this was my the last disaster deployment that I worked was North Carolina for Hurricane Matthew flooding. And these are just a few of the community relief pages that were set up and were operational at some point during the disaster. And when I was in Louisiana the second time last year, I think that was probably the most community relief pages I ever had to track. And there were probably 20 to 25 pages that were either active or maybe they would go inactive for a while and then get busy again. So you end up spending a lot of time in Facebook is what I'm telling you. Other common issues, Twitter is very fast, as you know. Be sure and set up keyword and hashtag searches, geo searches, combination searches, especially question mark searches are very helpful. It shows you the needs. You'll see people asking questions. Sometimes they'll use the hashtag, or sometimes you can find them using just common phrases like if it's the Missouri flood, you just put quotation marks around Missouri flood and then and question mark. And you can, using a Twitter search like that, you can find a lot of people sharing, the questions, the needs, the problems, the rumors that they're seeing. So that's just one tip. But yeah, you always have to keep an eye on Twitter. I like TweetDeck more if I'm at a desktop, just because you can see more columns at once. But I'm always working off of one or two laptops anyway, so I'm not a big screen person. If I was a big screen person, I definitely prefer TweetDeck, just because you can have an endless number of TweetDeck columns, whereas Hootsuite ties you to 10 columns, and then you have to set up a new tab for 10 more columns. And you do get into a lot of columns. I'll just switch over temporarily. I'm going to switch over to, I think I've got TweetDeck set up here. This was what we were looking at during the Louisiana floods. I always set up a shareable, disposable TweetDeck Twitter account for these kind of disasters. so that I can share a search, I can share a tweet deck like this. I've done it before for Colorado VOST as well, and I think you guys did find that helpful. So you can see we've got, I think I was up to like 30. At one point, we were close to 40 columns on this because we had a lot of different issues going at once and areas. So that's why I usually prefer Twitter, and TweetDeck, and it's a little faster. But I also love Hootsuite. Okay, I also love Hootsuite because whenever I set it up on the desktop or on the phone, it syncs. So whatever I set up, I can move from my laptop to my phone or tablet and have the same searches wherever I go. Especially if you're mobile, that's very important to be able to do that. And I would always suggest, especially early in the disaster, if you have the time to set up more than one, that way if for some reason TweetDeck goes down or locks up on you, you can always move over to Hootsuite or vice versa. That used to happen more than it does now, but it's still a good idea to have backups. Also, don't forget that even though Facebook and Twitter are consistently where everybody talks during disasters, don't forget to look at Instagram. There are big areas on the side of an Instagram post where people can start conversations, and the number of characters is bigger, of course, than a tweet. So you'll sometimes see conversations happening. At the very least, it's good to be looking at Instagram and the main hashtags for the disaster, because people are sharing images, which are a lot of times very helpful within the EOC and within your organization. And then along with that, there are conversations sometimes that get going on these pictures, questions, comments, just like everywhere else. Also, remember to look at Reddit, because Reddit, there's a Reddit for every state, there's a Reddit for most cities and towns, and now that Reddit has the ability to have live threads during disasters, quite often someone will actually set up and operate a live thread. I even saw, I can't remember where it was, but I saw some government agency actually set up, I think it was in Washington this last couple of months, that set up a live thread for some event, and I cannot remember right now off the top of my head what it was. But you could even consider setting up a Reddit Live and using that to share information. Oh no, I know what it was. It was for the Oroville Dam in California. Some local official obviously got permission, because all of the information was coming as fast into that live feed, and the account name was like the official account name for the agency that was running the incident. So anyway, that's somewhere to look, because you can search Reddit by keyword, you can search Reddit by the local. Sometimes there are posts in the state's subreddit or the city subreddit, or various subreddits that are in each community can have conversations. So good place to look for information. Also keep in mind that traditional media and non-traditional media, websites and blogs, have comment sections quite often, and people will talk there. Especially you want to keep an eye on television websites, radio websites, newspaper websites. They all have articles that they're sharing, and there are comment sections on those articles. Sometimes it depends on the disaster. Sometimes those are active and sometimes they are not. But it's always a good idea to look there and be aware of what people are saying online. So be prepared to monitor comment sections of traditional media websites and blogs for hot issues. Constantly adjust social listening and messaging strategy as needed when the situation changes. So that's why it's really important to have at least one digital communications person on site in the JIC. And for instance, the way my team, Oregon VOST team, is set up, Corey Grogan and Paula Negley are the two PIOs. On a big incident, they will both be there. But even though they are the VOST liaison person, they are very busy as PIOs, dealing with the disaster, going on camera, writing press releases. So they don't always have time to give us the latest information, to tell us to add a specific issue to our searches. That's why it's really good, if you can do it, to have someone who's there to actually lead the team and to talk to the team constantly in the JIC, at least during major disasters or incidents. Sometimes that's just not possible. Sometimes I'm doing VOST lead from Astoria for a small incident in Oregon, and I'm not in Salem in the JIC. But on something big, like when we had the Umpqua shooting last year, Umpqua Community College shooting last year, I actually went down and sat in the JIC, and it made a world of difference as far as the quality of our searches, the speed of us adjusting searches, and a messaging strategy. Really makes a big difference to have somebody on site. So here's what I was talking about, just to go back, here's what I was talking about with live threads. Here's an example of that Oroville Dam spillway failure mega thread. Information provided by Butte County Public Safety Scanner. So this was not the official one, but there was another one as well. And these live threads quite often are some of the best information on a disaster. And yes, you will get some snarky comments in there because it's Reddit. But quite often, there's really good information, and you definitely want to keep an eye on it to make sure there's not bad information. So sometimes that's how these rumors get started. Also, just keep an eye on new and emerging platforms. This is Mastodon. I'm very glad to tell you that Yik Yak is gone, no longer exists. It was a big problem if you remember Yik Yak. I'm glad to say we don't have to look there, but and I'm not comparing Mastodon to Yik Yak. It just occurred to me, it popped in my head. Mastodon is a new platform. They are wanting to be the open source version of Twitter. As you can see, it sort of looks like a very simplified tweet deck. You can go and get an account on any Mastodon instance. So basically, anybody can that is geeky enough or proficient enough can set up a Mastodon instance using the latest Mastodon open source software, and then they can link their instance to any or all of the Mastodon instances that exist. So unlike Twitter, where I join as Scott R, and I exist as the only Scott R, I can join multiple Mastodon instances as any name, using any name. And I'm like, if I'm Scott R on mastodon.social, that's the instance that I'm on right now, that I'm showing you, then I'm on here, and this home column that you're seeing is only the home column for this instance, which is called Mastodon Social. Then there's another column that isn't showing here, but there's a column to the right that that third column you see where it says local timeline. If I click on that, that takes me to the shared or federated timeline, they call it. So anyway, it's a relatively new platform. It's been up for some months, and it's getting very popular. So I'm not saying that you definitely need to keep an eye on this, but if somebody set up a Colorado instance, I would be, if when they set up Oregon instances, I'm going to join those. I'm going to go in and keep an eye and see on how it's being used. I did see on a Portland instance the other day, somebody sharing some emergency related information, but it was not, I wasn't working it. So, I just wanted to see how it's being used. So all I'm suggesting is keep an eye out for any emerging platforms, and they're quite often easy to learn. This one did not take a lot of time for me to figure out. Now I know the basics of how I can search on this instance, and I know that I'm not seeing all of the posts on the federated timeline. Even if I search within this instance, it's different instance to instance. So uh, something we have to figure out as we learn these new platforms, and whatever's getting used in your area, that's what you need to use. This is just an example of a public health VOST effort that I did, and this one was before we actually made the Oregon VOST team official. I was contacted by a friend who was setting up to help Oregon Health Authority with the Ebola situation that they had whenever people were flying into Portland and being checked for, there was a watch on people who may or may not have Ebola. So the spike on Topsy, unfortunately, this tool is no longer exists. But like this spike you see is the one weekend where we had someone that they were watching that got a fever and went to the hospital. And so that on that weekend, we had a huge spike in activity on Twitter, especially. And so what you're seeing here is, is the monitoring tools that we're using. You're seeing the workbook that we used, the resources that we were where we collected them, just like your workbook. And then also here's the Oregon Health Authority report that we were doing at first twice a day, and then we went to one time a day. And major themes from social media, information gaps, possible points of confusion, emerging themes, the various things we were watching and putting in the report. And then just wanted to mention that there will be annoyances. There are often annoyances, the things that you have to search through that are irrelevant and yet somehow end up in front of you when you're trying to do this work. And it's frustrating, very frustrating sometimes. I mean, we spend a lot of time whenever you're doing FEMA-related searches, spend a lot of time seeing people say FEMA camp and FEMA coffins and these kind of weird negative things. But that's the job. You're trying to search through all of this stuff and find the useful information. So, in Twitter, you can actually do very easily cut out a lot of those using advanced searches. You can do minus coffin, minus camp, minus FEMA camp, but you still end up on Facebook spending a lot of time seeing people say, "Oh, I heard that there's this area that they're going to keep people." Luckily, in most disasters, people really do want to share good information, and that stuff is kept to a minimum. But on a FEMA deployment, when I'm actually monitoring the national FEMA page to look for people that are talking about the local disaster that I'm working, but they're talking on the FEMA national page, quite often you're seeing that kind of stuff. And ignore the trolls. The only reason you would ever put this kind of stuff in is if there was a lot of it, it was specifically relevant to your disaster. People say FEMA camp pretty much on every disaster, so we don't bother, putting that kind of stuff in the reports. It's just noise, and it doesn't need to go in unless there's something specifically relevant to the specific disaster. So another result of all of our efforts doing this kind of work is the Virtual Emergency Management Association. So since I'm on the board, I just wanted to do a plug for this organization, which does great work. We're actually having, sort of offering a lot of information on the SMEM chat. We also have the regular VOST Leadership Coalition calls that we usually host. And there's just lots of good information available, and starting to get a lot of industry attention as far as the possibilities of partnerships or offers. Lots of organizations want to give presentations on their products. So check out Virtual EMA and see if it might be something that would be helpful for you. That's it. And these are just a few of the people over the years who have made my life a lot easier as I have learned social media and VOST and social media listening. Thanks to everybody, and happy to take any questions. Hello. I hope I haven't been talking to myself this whole time. Anybody there? Hello? Can you hear me? Okay, well, sorry, I thought maybe that I had gotten cut off or something. So that's my presentation. Let me know if I can answer any questions. Are we still live? I cannot hear you. I don't know if you have your microphone on. Maybe your microphone is muted. I'm trying to turn off screen share now. I realize I probably should turn off screen share if I can do that. Oh, no, I think I'm out of screen share now. I cannot hear you. I think maybe your mic, okay, I'm waiting. Standing by. While we're waiting, if anybody has questions and they want to type them into the chat, feel free to do that until we get Jennifer back on voice. I can't hear you. Technical difficulties. Okay, standing by for a question. So when you go on a schema deployment, do you have a standard set of initial search terms? Yes, because FEMA headquarters is already on every disaster, they've already started the searches. There are, for every disaster, just a standard set of search terms that they're using that they hand off to us. Usually before I even arrive on site, I've already started setting up my own searches. So when I get there, I compare theirs to mine, and then if they're still working the disaster, if they're not just handing off to me directly immediately, then I will actually also we'll do a shared I forget what they call it. Anyway, it's just a Word doc that is basically a manual of the searches that you're using for each disaster. So on floods, there's a similar group of searches that you're going to do on fires, on earthquakes, on hurricanes. There's always similar searches that you're going to run for each and every one of those. And then also, like I said, not only are you running specific keyword search terms, geo searches, and hashtag searches on Twitter, you're also doing simple keyword searches on Facebook that lead you to more and more uh, community relief pages. So that's pretty common to have happen. I'm going to read the screen now. So that's there are always when we get on site, we get handed whatever searches they've already been running, and then we start running those, and then I also am bringing my own searches. And then the person on site really can refine those searches, because quite often there are some little issues or things that seem like little issues, but as soon as you start running a more specific search for that issue using keywords, you will actually find that it actually is an issue that you need to deal with through messaging. So that happens quite often. On Louisiana, that was probably the time whenever we had the most search help. The second time I was in Louisiana last year was a massive, major flood. It was the biggest. It was not quite Hurricane Sandy size, but it was close to Hurricane Sandy size. It wasn't like 25 states, but it was like all over the entire state, and not coastal. This was inland flooding for the most part, and massive flooding in areas that weren't often hit. And so headquarters had, I think it was 5 to 7 people that were working when I arrived on scene doing searches all day, every day for Louisiana only. And then they kept helping us as our staff were arriving at the JFO and getting set up. Uh, they kept helping us for, I think we were like 2 weeks into that disaster before we completely took over searches, before we had enough people in-house. On that second Louisiana flooding, which I think it was October or September last year, um, we had 3 full-time digital communications people, 1 trainee, and 3 to 4 FEMA Corps people that were social media proficient that also threw in and helped us with searches so that we were able to meet that report load, which was going through a massive amount of community relief pages and Twitter searches and keeping an eye on media comments and all of that. So, and that lasted for well over a month. I think we were into a month and a half before I left, and we still had at least 3 FEMA Corps people and 3 digital communications specialists full time on that. That was the biggest time we could do. Sorry, another question. Do you use a standard reporting template for social media monitoring? On FEMA reports, it's actually not even, I wouldn't even call it a template, because it's just a bulleted list. Um, I don't know if I'm allowed to share those, but if you look at any standard outline, you're seeing what a FEMA report looks like. The first line always is, what is the current sentiment towards FEMA? And then you go into any hot issues on any subject. So it would say FEMA, current sentiment, current activity on social media is high, and sentiment is negative or positive. And so this is a simple, it's almost like an executive summary because the FEMA reports are possibly going as high as the president's desk. So they're really like an executive summary and they're very brief. Now we do provide links to all of the hot issues and any, like examples of the types of news that you're seeing, recurring themes, so that people can get more information and even go directly to posts, see what the hot issues are. But the reports for the social listening, unless it's a major disaster where you've got more than a page, they tend to be like half a page. Um, what we've been doing on VOST, especially early days of VOST, I found that we were really putting a lot more information into our reports than needed, just because we were new and we were demonstrating our abilities and what we were able to do. It was sort of a learning phase, both for the VOST and for the team leads and the administrations that we were providing information for. So what I'm saying is, I think we tend, and I will probably continue this in a VOST, towards doing a brief summary at the top so that those that need just the brief summary can get it fast, but then go into more detail than we would provide on a phenotype report, just because we want to demonstrate to the people we're working for that there's a lot of information out there, and these are the types of information that we can look for and find and may need to be part of the mission, or at least need to be considered as a possibility. So I think that's yeah. So then question number 3, can you share what the standard FEMA search terms are? They're just it's very similar to what we use, or almost exactly the same. I mean, you would do on Missouri, you're going to do early on, you're going to do well, I'll send you some. I can send you some examples. You're already probably doing a lot of them. I will say that there's a couple of people like Gloria Huang and Sarah. Oh, of course, I'm not going to remember Sarah's last name right now, but Sarah at FEMA headquarters, who are like really good at Boolean searches where you're doing. I'll just have to show them to you. And I've gotten a lot better just from having worked with them at narrowing down. The problem with some of those Boolean searches is they are so specific, and you're looking for such specific information that you end up missing what's going on just by doing a simple search like Missouri flood. You know what I mean? So if you're looking too specifically for a very specific thing, using multiple words in a search term, sometimes you're still going to see that information. It's just going to be, you're going to get it faster in a Boolean than you are by doing a search that has tons of noisy results that you have to glean through. But sometimes when gleaning through, you find those unknown issues and those new issues that we were talking about, that I was talking about earlier. So that's why it's important to do those Booleans, and I'll post some examples. I'm sure I can find some examples really quick to post in here. But it's also really important to do the basic searches. So boulder fire, and then the word boulder and fire in parentheses, and then let me see. I think we've got another question. Can you share a template of your social media monitoring report? Oh yeah, I can definitely. The one that we're using a lot now from with Oregon VOST, sort of morphed out of that first Oregon Health Authority presentation that or Oregon Health Authority activation that I did. And it's changed a little. We used the same sort of template for the Umpqua Community College shooting and found it very useful. And then because there were so many different types of issues we were looking at on that, it changed a little. But I can send you a couple of different examples of those reports. I can actually even share with you the reports from Umpqua Community College, because And I'll send one of the examples from the Ebola activation as well. Yeah, happy to do that. Let me see very quickly. I'm going to go to my, I've got a notes section where I have searches saved, and I'll just send you an example real quick of like a complicated query search that we drop into Twitter, like some of the flood searches.
Any chance you can hear me?
Hey, I hear you.
Yay! I have no idea what happened, but my mic was not working for some reason. I think that's the questions for today. I really appreciate your presentation. If you want to go ahead and email me some of those things, any standard search terms, that kind of thing, and then I can share it with the group. That would be fantastic. I'm just going to wait one more second, see if there's any other questions. Oh, good. It looks like the rest of the group can hear me too now. Hi, COVOST people. I don't know what happened to my microphone. I'm sorry. I think that looks like that's it for the questions. Oh, hang on. Maybe one more.
I would just say that congratulations on your boss. I always talk about you guys as being the most advanced and the farthest along towards being an official boss, because I think you really were the first to go through the whole process of formalizing your team and the idea that any county can request your boss. You were really the first ones to do that, and Oregon Boss is really following your model on that. We're not as far along as you are, but we're getting there.
Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate seeing some of the insights you have from the Oregon VOST. And yeah, we're getting our team back together here. We're actually doing a big recruiting push right now. So we're getting some new members. We've had about 5 new members in the last month or two. So that's fantastic. We're just thrilled to have some new people on board. And if you want to, if you just want to share that information with me, I can share it with everyone on the Slack channel and email it to everyone as well. It sounds like, I guess, everybody else is on a different chat, so I'm not able to see their questions or comments, but if I get any additional comments for you, Scott, I will send that to you via email as well. Okay.
Everybody go get on in chat. Starting in 30 minutes.
Perfect. Well, again, thank you, Scott. We're at 10 o'clock, so I'm going to wrap up our training for today and tell everybody thank you guys so much for being here. I also wanted to let everyone know we do have an activation request for August 21st from Larimer County to monitor for the solar eclipse. So I will be sending everyone the link to the workbook. I just need you to put on there if you're available or not. We are going to be monitoring, I believe, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. We're going to have our standard 2-hour shifts, but if everybody could please note on that workbook if you're available, when you're available, by next Friday, the 23rd, I would really appreciate it, because we need to get back to Larimer County and let them know if we're going to be able to fulfill the request or not. The other thing I just wanted to mention real quick in closing, as I mentioned to Scott, we are doing a big recruiting push. I'm sure some of you guys have seen on the Facebook and Facebook and Twitter channels. We've been running some campaign messages for recruiting for COVOST, and I am happy to say we've gotten several new members that are going through the background check process right now. A flyer that I'm going to post to the Slack channel and also send it as an email attachment. Please share it with your friends, your coworkers, anyone you think might be interested in joining COVOST. You guys are our biggest recruiters. Getting out there and recruiting people that that are already in the field. That's going to be the best recruiting tool that we have, but I am starting a campaign with some of the local universities and colleges to try and recruit some kids that are in emergency management or communication programs at the local colleges as well. But just wanted to let you guys know you'll be getting a few emails from me with some of those campaign messages. And then also, if you're following us, hopefully you are on Twitter and on Facebook, please share or repost those the posts that we have on Facebook and Twitter group as well. The more spread we can get with that message, the better. So if you have any questions about the COVOST recruiting, please just send me an email or a Slack question. You can put it on the general channel for Slack. But I'm happy to help if you have any questions or you have someone that you think might be interested. Because again, I would love to grow this team and expand us even more than what we have now. And I think we have a really great team. But I think the more members we can get incorporated, the easier it makes it on all of us when we do get activation requests. So I think that's it for today. I thank everybody so much for joining us. And Scott, thank you again for presenting. It was a wonderful presentation, and we will have that presentation available for you if you're interested in having the slides. And then this will be posted live so you can watch it later if you choose so. If you have any other questions for Scott or myself, please just email me or let me know. I'm off here. So thank you, everybody.